Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Welcome to Real Recovery. Bill and George here at Real Recovery. We talk about recovery from addiction through Christ, a subject with great appeal, hosted by two guys with limited appeal. And any resemblance to trained talk show hosts is purely coincidental. Hey, George.
Well said.
Yeah.
Can't disagree with any
Remember
of
that, those disclaimers?
Yeah. Always a pleasure. I know tonight's show, yesterday we did it.
Whenever.
It's timeless, and I know the person, I know his story. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah. Here on Real Recovery, we like talking about a step every week. I always think of the recovery steps as 12 different calisthenics. If people said to me, I want to lose 10 pounds, I'd say, well, here's 12 good calisthenics to do to help lose weight. And they might say, well, I don't want to do calisthenics. I just want to lose weight.
Yeah.
That doesn't work that way.
That's right.
These 12 steps help you in your recovery process. And they're really biblically based. Some of them may have been watered down a little bit over the years, but they all come from Scripture.
Totally.
As originally intended by the writers, the authors of the 12 steps.
Very good.
Yeah. I
should just go home now.
No, don't do that.
No, this is good.
I need you now.
What is the step?
Step number 4 we're going to talk about tonight, which is make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
So when you say we always like to do a step on this show, I don't want to do step 4. I never did, and I continue to not want to. And what we look at is our moral inventory, and people might get that confused with what they did. What step 4 is the reasons you do it. It's a heart issue. And the way we get at that is we look at our resentments, our fears, and our sex conduct. And I can't stay sober. I can't stay walking with God. The Scripture talks about you can't be angry at a brother that you can't see and say you love a God that you can't see. And so it's also the number one offender to going back. And I was at a dinner where a guy was talking about he's just sober 14 years. And he said, I was 14 years sober before. And what happened was when they celebrated it, he said, I'm driving home and I didn't like what my mentor said. I didn't think it was good enough. And when I got home, my wife certainly doesn't respect me enough and isn't good enough. And the guys at work didn't value me enough. And he said, I went out and drank for another 6 years. And I heard that and thought, you think just like I do. The resentment is a cancer. Our fears. Well, you do a resentment list and you see your part in it, what caused it. And a lot of it is what you did. The fears, I had a lot of fears. I had a fear of heights, snakes, dying, drinking, doing cocaine, hitting somebody with my car. And there's 2 prayers. There's the resentment prayer. It talks about this is a spiritually sick person that I have a resentment against. Keep me from being angry. And the Scripture says, do not let the sun go down on your anger, and in your anger do not sin. And you pray for somebody who's spiritually sick, it kind of lifts it. And where can I be of service? God, keep me from being afraid so that I can better do your work. And then we get in the sex conduct. Was it selfish? Is it out of biblical lines? All sex outside of marriage. And what it does, it empties of our junk so we can get filled with the Spirit. But I want to bring Ben in a little bit on this and just get his views.
Bring our guest in
early?
Before?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Because I think he can really help with his Christian background on the 4th step.
Yeah, that's a great summary of the 4th step, George. I think for myself, there's a selfish root behind every one of those things you mentioned, like fear, right? And I didn't realize just how selfish and self-seeking my behavior was. So I did all these things. I never really stopped doing quote unquote selfless things. I did the dishes and took the kids to school and cleaned the house. And I did these lots of things. And I was completely blind to just how destructively selfish I was in the middle of my addiction. And I was living almost every moment. I was living every moment to please Ben. And it didn't matter that I was doing all these other things. In fact, I was just using those things as a shield to get away with being more selfish. And so for me, I didn't quite get the fourth step. And I think there's a lot of room to move around within the fourth step. But for me, what it did is it peeled back the layers of the onion, and it showed me just how selfish and self-seeking I really was. And it's really easy, I think, to skip over that because I don't really want to see the nasty stuff inside of me. And that's what that step does, is it forces me to expose it.
Do you think we are that selfish, self-seeking, and self-centered? I know I am, and the Blue Book tells me my drinking is a symptom of that problem. I want to be God in my own life. Is that fair across the board? Make my own decisions?
Absolutely. We put ourselves first. We do. And practicing the fourth step in a when you first get into recovery, you do it, but then you do it in another form on a regular basis. And the better I get at identifying where I'm being selfish, the more able I am to deal with that and let God cut it out.
So you're looking at breaking the patterns, your thought action patterns of getting it back to you, what's in it for Ben.
Yeah, you are.
The reason I know that, because I do it.
And we're not good, really, I think, about talking about ourselves and our own problems. I'm more than happy to discuss what's wrong with you.
Well, Ben, I'm going to tell you, we're going to take a break and we come back. You better be willing to talk about yourself because you are the guest on Real Recovery. And if you don't talk, we're in trouble.
We'll be fired.
No, we're not going to fire you. But
he said us.
Oh, he's going to fire us. All right, that was a little tease. Usually we don't bring our guest on before the first break.
We never do.
We are breaking patterns, George. We're still able to learn new things. Old dogs learning new tricks. I like that.
We might not do it again, but it worked tonight.
I doubt we'll ever do it. But we're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to hear all of Ben's story. You're listening to Real Recovery. So glad you're with us. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We weren't gone long. Here we are. George, I'm looking forward to our guest, and I would ask you to do the privilege of bringing him onto the show.
You know, that didn't seem like we were long at all, Bill.
No, that's what I mean.
It really flew by.
Yeah.
Well, this is my friend that I know coming to do the show, and I know this is going to be a great show of God's story in him. Ben, welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
Nice to have you here, and any friend of George is a friend of mine.
I thought you were going to say any friend of George is a friend of George.
No, I was going to.
It's a good day. You're being nice.
I'm being nice. Yeah,
it's early, though, very early. Hey, where did you grow up?
So we moved around a lot. My dad was a pastor growing up, and we had various ministries. I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but lived in Massachusetts, Colorado, Wyoming, upstate New York, Kentucky, kind of all over the place. I spent most of my formative years in Tennessee, and then, I would say Tennessee.
Your dad was a pastor?
My dad was I was a preacher's kid, man.
Wow.
What was that
I did not know that.
Was that conflicting for you?
Well, not really. That's all I knew, and so it was kind of just like the life that I was in, and I enjoyed it. I was a big fish in a small pond. I got to be, the preacher's kid, and I got people treated me nice because my dad was a pastor, and it was great.
Were you and your dad pretty close?
Yeah, and I'd say we still are. We're still close. When I was 15, he left the ministry and went on to become a counselor. So, but yeah, we're still close. Yep, I'm the oldest of 11 kids.
Oh, wow.
Big family. Yep, 8 boys and 3 girls.
Family.
It's a big family. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So, George, my question is what possibly could have gone wrong?
Well, I think a lot of things, but we'll get to that. So what did you do for fun as a kid? Were you an athlete?
Yeah, nothing like you. I heard you peaked when you were 9 years old.
Fun passing kick competition, first place.
I like that.
You should see the medal. It's really big.
It's not about me. It gave me a platform.
I laughed out loud when I heard that, though, peaking at 9.
Well, that was kind of mean, but it's actually true.
It's actually true. So
Yeah,
The truth should never be mean.
Since.
Man, I was homeschooled growing up, and I hated it. I always wanted to be a public school kid. I felt like they got to have all the fun, and I was pretty sheltered growing up. My mom, bless her heart, her kind of her whole philosophy. She loved the Lord until the day she died, and amazing lady. But I remember her quoting the scripture out. The Bible says, "I will put no evil thing before my eye." And so that meant, if the movie was PG, we probably weren't allowed to see it. And I remember the rule was you had to call home and ask if you wanted to watch whatever you wanted to watch on TV. And if I was hanging out with my friends at 12, 13 years old, do you think I wanted to call home in front of my friends and say, "Hey, can we watch The Sandlot?"
Right.
So, that kind of set things up for sort of a pattern of sort of rebellion that started early on. Is I wanted to I wanted to have fun, and I felt like I was being held back from that. And so, as time went on, I say early on, I started to lie, and, I pretty much did what, if I thought I could get away with it, I would do it. My sponsor, Glenn, says that you're an alcoholic or an addict way before, you ever pick up that first drink. Wow. And I think there's truth in that. You're geared a certain way, man. And I did, and I was doing and saying things way before I ever started using that were, red flags or.
Were you able to play in any sports teams outside of the house?
I played basketball and baseball and community league stuff.
Okay.
By the time I hit, I didn't hit puberty until I was 30. So
okay,
that seems late.
It was a little late. Yeah. Late. I just remember that all the boys were turning into men, and I was still about 4 feet tall. Mm-hmm. And I kind of gave up on it because I wasn't. I don't know about you, but if I don't think I can win at something, I usually just quit. So
I don't start.
Yeah,
yeah.
Girls go through puberty usually between like ages 10 and 13. For boys, it's Tuesday at 1:30.
That's right.
And all of a sudden you wake up and you've become a man.
Yeah,
It's very sudden, and if you're in that situation where all your other peers are like months ahead, it's intimidating. And then you go, how do I compete on this level?
Yeah. So I remember enjoying sports and being athletic, but some in the early high school stages, and because we were homeschooled, we didn't really have access to, some of the resources that you have in public school.
You were homeschooled all the way through high school?
All the way through high school.
Wow.
So you didn't use at all?
Nope.
Drinking?
I didn't start drinking until, we could kind of get into that. Sure. That's where we're here, right?
I have one question about the upbringing with mom and dad saying, if you're going to watch something, let us know in advance.
Yeah.
What was going on in your brain? Did you think, I now have to find a way to get around not reporting this, not calling this in, watching it and not reporting? Did your mind go to, how do I avoid telling them?
Yeah, I think I just had a knack for deception.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. I think I was able to use my charm and charisma to kind of get what I wanted. And I figured out early on how to do that. And it's not like I, walked around all the time and was just telling, these whoppers. But when I wanted something, I would do everything I could to get what I wanted. And I don't ever remember feeling guilty. I've got other siblings, man, that struggle with, they can't tell a lie or they feel guilty for days, right? Mm-hmm. And struggle with that even as adults, doing the wrong thing. I don't ever remember having that feeling.
That's a really good question, because what happens to us, and I did it, all of a sudden it becomes okay to lie to our parents, either directly or withholding.
Yeah.
And we get good at it, and it progresses.
Yeah. Yet I remember my dad saying, because they recognized that, that I was lying. And, I remember my dad saying, son, people aren't going to believe you. You want me to believe what you say, right? And yeah, I do. Well, you gotta be truthful. You gotta be honest. And I just don't ever remember it clicking. Mm-hmm. Like I would go and still tell a lie when I wanted to get something or avoid getting in trouble. That was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I knew if I spun things a certain way, I could get the heat off. And that's what I got really good at.
I think it was Churchill, maybe. I can't remember who made this quote, but after someone lied to him, he replied with, "I'm not horribly bothered by the fact you lied to me. What bothers me now is I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again."
Yeah. Yep. And now
that's the problem.
Now that I'm a parent, I can sense that, now that I've got kids my kids are 8 and 10. So I'm seeing that and experiencing that from a parent's point of view.
That's interesting. What goes around comes around.
Yeah,
hey?
That's right.
So you get out of high school. What did you do after that?
I partied. I moved out when I was 18. I got out of the house as quick as I could because my dad was authoritarian. This is my house. You're going to follow my rules. We clashed a lot when I hit teenage, 17, 18. Probably before that, we just clashed a lot. And so it was, hey, if you want to live somewhere else, and you can do whatever you want. So I took full advantage of that. As soon as I was 18, I moved out of the house. I was involved in church and church youth group. I got involved in youth leadership at my church. Always stayed plugged into church. Even though my dad left the ministry, we were always involved, through the encouragement mostly of my mom. But we were attendees at church wherever we were living. It was actually with a group of the youth leaders that I smoked weed for the first time.
How old were you then?
18, I want to say 19 years old. But
did you like it?
Yeah, it was great. I remember the first time it was it was a new experience. It was out of the ordinary. It was and whatever it was, I liked it because it was, I've thought a lot about, analyzing why you do that and why you get high. I think, but it came down to, I felt good and it was a way to control how good I felt. And, but it was also a way to fit in, but I don't remember thinking that, at the time. But the kids, remember I said, I wanted to be in public school. I wanted to hang out with the cool kids, and the cool kids in my youth group that I thought were cool, they were smoking weed. So that's what I wanted to do too.
So we find that we like getting high, and when we do it, we go, I'm going to be doing this again.
Yep.
How did that progress for you in the early years?
It was mostly weed, and it was easier to find that than it was to get alcohol before I turned 21, which you hear that all the time. But I had no kind of qualms about trying anything. So I remember trying cocaine, and man, I probably talked for 8 hours straight, drove everybody else that I was with in the car crazy. I don't remember much. I just remember it felt really good. But that was kind of an isolated incident. I didn't get into the harder stuff until later.
So you're smoking pot. What kind of job did you have?
I had a job. My first full-time job was working at Academy Sports and Outdoors. It's a sporting goods store in the South. And it was, I remember I held on to that job for about a year, close to a year, but I lost it because I came into work high. And that was another thing that I started to dabble in at the time, was prescription medication and pills. Because again, I didn't really care what the chemical was, although I enjoyed weed and alcohol. I would do whatever would give me that feeling, that, the dopamine hit is really what I was after. And it just was fun. It felt like fun. And at that point in time in my life, I didn't have consequences, not out of my own intelligence by any means, but some kids get arrested or in trouble. I was able to avoid that.
Until you lost your job.
Until I lost my job.
But you can get another job.
But I can get another job, man. I'm 19 years old. Like, who cares? I could live in my car if I wanted to. I was kind of all over the place with that. I was living friends' couches and stuff. When you're 19, you kind of get a pass for being young and dumb. It's really, I remember listening to a Jordan Peterson talking about it. Like, you get a pass when you're younger, right? But when you start getting into your 30s and God forbid 40 years old and you're still doing that stuff, people look at you a different way. And it's a lot more difficult, if not impossible, to, walk into your friend's house when you're 45, if you've got any friends at that point, and say, hey, can I sleep on your couch for a couple months?
So you did this for a while, this in and out, moving around, job to job, or were you holding down jobs?
Yeah, here and there. I think I worked at Academy Sports and Outdoors, and then I tried to get a job working for the National Guard, signed up for that, but you had to have a clean drug test, and I couldn't quit smoking weed for more than a few days. So I remember getting one of those drinks that you can buy at those head shops that are supposed to help you pass a drug test. Well, that didn't work. I remember calling up the sergeant from National Guard asking, what are my results for MEPS that you have to go through? And he said, hey, yeah, Carlson, you didn't pass your drug test. I think I hung up the phone and never called him back. But that was embarrassing. I remember feeling embarrassed and disappointed because I had walked around and told people, I'm going to go do this. Yep. And it didn't work out. And that's a pattern, man, starting to establish of not being able to hold down jobs. I see, looking back, there were consequences that were starting to build up.
Yeah.
It's a good segue.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Our guest Ben is here with us, and we're going to get right back to his story after a short break. Welcome back to Real Recovery. Bill and George. And George, amazing story that Ben's laying out here for us. I have a feeling it's going to get a little worse and then a lot better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're on the way.
I'm on the way.
Do you think you were addicted then, psychologically?
There was a point in there. Well, and I mentioned, National Guard couldn't stop smoking weed in order to go do this. And I was starting to get disappointed by these things falling through. I went to I decided, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go be a doctor. I'm going to go to pre-med at Oral Roberts University. And I chose Oral Roberts because I knew it was a Christian school, and I was hoping that would keep me from partying.
Do you think it would rub off on you a little bit?
Yeah, something.
Okay.
It took me a week to find the kids at that school that partied.
Did you have a lifestyle statement you had to sign, like you can't dance and you can't drink and do drugs?
Yep.
And
you had to sign a piece of paper. It's a very strict school. You had to be in by a certain time. I think I got on probation with the first semester. I had come in. We got off and partied on a weekend.
Didn't you also have to make a declaration of faith?
Yes.
To get into that school?
Yeah, you had to, and I was a believer. I was a believer. I remember giving my life to Christ when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
So, and I went through periods of being very serious about my Christian faith.
Yeah.
And although during the time from high school onwards when I was partying, I just kind of forgot about all that. I never denied Christ. And as a matter of fact, I would be more than willing to debate with you about, creation and evolution.
We don't need to go there.
Yeah, we don't have to get there.
No, your
That's
theology.
not the purpose of this show.
Yeah, but I would take pride in knowing the answers.
Sure,
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, as your sponsor says, we always feel like we have to get it to do it, but you don't do it until. You don't get it until you do it. So, like, I can figure out all the theology and all that,
right.
But that's not going to help me until I pick up my cross and deny myself daily. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, did you feel kind of guilty? I mean, here you are at Oral Roberts. You want to be a doctor, and you're in trouble already.
Man, I have this narcissistic streak in me, even to this day, and I feel like I do feel bad. And I feel like I know that I've hurt people, especially those closest to me. But the reality is I felt bad when I got caught, and I felt bad when things were going bad for me, right? But if I could muscle myself up and turn things around, then I was okay again, and I would just go right back to the old patterns and the selfish, self-centered way of life. And it got really bad. I dropped out of ORU.
Are you going to get kicked out, did you think?
I wasn't. I stopped going to classes, and eventually, sure, yeah. I had gotten in trouble and had to meet with the dean, and I knew all the things to say. I grew up in church. I knew the lingo, and I could talk the talk with anyone, so I could get out of it, but I couldn't fool myself. Is the truth, and I kept trying to find these ways to redeem myself, and I joined the Marine Corps. I was able to sober up long enough to pass the drug test for that. I got kicked out of the Marine Corps for using drugs. Came back from a weekend liberty. We were about to deploy on my unit, and we got back drug tested, failed the drug test. Guess what? My unit went overseas, and I got an other than honorable discharge. And after that, things got really dark, because at that point in time, and this was probably mid-20s, the depression and the darkness and the feelings of failure were seeping in, and I got into doing cocaine, and I went to rehab actually pre-Marine Corps my parents wanted me to go to rehab. I remember calling them up and telling them I was doing cocaine, and they called my old youth pastor and like, we're going to get him into rehab. And I sobered up for, 6 months after that. But I remember nothing ever beyond, 6 to 8, 9 month stretch of sobriety. And it was always, for me, I knew that God was the key, right? But what became frustrating is the way that I did it was, if I just pray hard enough, if I just, get the right theology, if I just do these things right, then I'm going to be able to stay sober. And I just couldn't do it, man. There was something missing.
When your sponsor Glenn talks about guys are going to figure it out. Well, I heard this or I read this, and this Bible verse changes everything. Like, I got to get it before I can do it. Mm-hmm. And you go out and you're stumbling and you're falling and you know it, but you're trying, and you're kind of doing a double-minded man is unstable in all that he does. You go back to using. Were you trying to do anything to work out your sobriety other than going to church and just white-knuckling it?
Not really. No, I did. After I got kicked out of the Marine Corps, that was my first exposure to a 12-step. And I remember thinking that, there's something going on here, but not being willing to surrender that this is what I needed. I needed this structure.
Okay, well, you were a Christian, too. You probably didn't need to do it.
Exactly. And that's how I was kind of say, well, I don't need this. That's pretty element
for you when you have some good theology. I mean, there's 12 steps.
Right, right.
The thought about actually that might be a way you walk out your faith doesn't connect then.
Yeah.
So you go back out, you're in and out, you're circling the drain.
And then I figured out, I know what I'll do to help things out. I'll go get married.
There you go.
That'll solve things, right?
That's right up there with the Marine Corps.
They both start with the letter M.
And you get deployed.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can get discharged.
Yeah.
Yep. Never honorably either.
No. And I sobered up for my wife, man. She was not going to tolerate. She knew something about my past. It was not okay for me to be using. So I kept things together kind of long enough to tie the knot. But talk about lying to my parents, man. I established really quick lying to my wife to keep the heat off, to keep things going the way I wanted them to go. And boy, did that end in a lot of hurt and disaster, for sure.
Was she supposed to save you, do you think? If I could just get this, boy, I'll be good?
Yep.
How long did that last?
It lasted, I think it was about 8 or 9 months after we got married, and she caught me with some beers. And it was the promises, I won't do it again. I won't, I promise, I'll do this. I know what I'll do. And I remember coming up with these plans of, I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to, talk to my elders at church and confess everything. And then, ultimately it's about surrender. And I wasn't willing to surrender. I wanted to do things my way. And there was a way that was starting to present itself, but I didn't want to do it that way. And that's really where it comes in, is there was a point in my life where I just couldn't deny that everything that I'd done up to that point was a colossal failure, or rather, I could not escape that fact that everything I'd done was made a complete mess of things.
Is there a difference between looking at my circumstances that are a failure and then finally going, I'm a failure? How do we make that connection if we're out there struggling? Does God have to do that for us?
You know, he does ultimately. But I'll tell you, the moment for me, you know, I'd been to rehab, I'd lost jobs, I'd gotten kicked out of the Marine Corps.
Did you stay married?
Stayed married, but my wife walked in, and I went back to school, back to college here in Minneapolis to get the right theology. And but I remember I got over COVID. COVID gave me a great excuse, man. I figured out that I could show up to a doctor's appointment over video, and I faked all the symptoms for ADHD, and I got ADHD medication, which, as you know, that's just speed. It's just
yeah, but you took it as it was prescribed.
Oh,
right?
of course not.
Okay. So you're using it?
I would take the entire prescription in a couple of days. That was supposed to last me for a month. I'd stay up for, a week. But what happened is my wife knew something was going on. And again, there was periods of sobriety. There was a time that she would catch me, and I would profess, to be changed. But this last time around, when I was in rehab, she walked in, and I had been on a binge for days, and I had switched from ADHD medication to just straight meth. And it's the same stuff, right? Well, that put me in the darkest place that I've ever been. And I remember she was a nurse. The way I'd get away with this, by the way, is that my wife is a nurse. So she would work the night shift at work. So I would not do anything until she walked out the door. And when she'd come back, she'd be exhausted and kind of too tired to see, how hungover I was or how, tweaked out I was. But I started getting other prescriptions to help me sleep. And there's a story in the big book about this. But you take one thing, and I was like, well, I need something to calm me down. And so now I had a couple different prescriptions. And I passed out, and I woke up lying on top of drug paraphernalia, computer open. You can imagine, the things that I've been doing all night long. And my wife is standing over me saying, what are you doing? And I'll never forget the look in her eyes and the feeling that I had. And I knew at that moment that it was over. There was no more BS. That was it, man. And we'd already had an ultimatum at that point where we'd had multiple ultimatums, but, if I ever do this again, I'll leave. Well, I knew. I had to packed my bag, and I remember my kids saying, where are you going, Daddy? And walking out that door to my car, and that was it. That was the last time.
So did you go to rehab?
I went to rehab after that.
And you got out. What did you do different after this rehab?
I had at church, I went to a Bible study with a guy who was involved in a 12-step program. And he was always talking, the steps. And I remember kind of hearing him talk and like, okay, that works for you. But, I got my theology. That's what I can use, right? And talk about, when I was in rehab, and I remember I cried more than I don't typically cry, right? But I was just sobbing in rehab and broken. And I remember at that point thinking about this guy's way of doing recovery and admitting to myself right then and there that I was an alcoholic, that I was an addict. And I'd always put an asterisk on that as a Christian because I felt like, well, no, in Christ, I'm a new creation. And so the people that said that about themselves, I kind of looked down on for having bad theology. And in that moment, and I remember it admitting that, it was a big step for me. It really was. And it felt like a relief too, to admit that too. And I realized that, wait a second, admitting this doesn't change who I am in Christ. That came a little bit later, that realization. But for me, that moment, though, was big. It was huge. In rehab, after this last just falling on my face. And at that point in time, I didn't know my wife had every right to walk out the door and take the kids out of protection for them and her. And just admitting, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict.
So you're beaten into a state of reasonableness, and you start doing it the way it's laid out. And I wish I had heard some of those conversations because I know both you guys, and it's working for you.
Yeah.
And you start feeling better. Did the light come on in the movie of The Wizard of Oz, The Color?
It was something like that, man. It's hard to say the points where the light bulbs clicked on. I certainly had those, but it was definitely a process that started with admitting I was an alcoholic, and then just doing what I was told to do, because I don't mind being told what to do as long as I want to do the thing that I'm being told to do.
Nice.
Right. But
if God's will lines up with yours, you're good.
I've got no problem doing that. But when it comes down to doing what Ben wants to do, I wanted to do that first. And this was one of the first times, if not the first time, that I said, you know what, I'm going to do what these other people are telling me. And what they were telling me to do is what God wanted me to do.
That is great. So that worked pretty well. How long did you stay sober initially?
Initially, I stayed sober for over 15 months. I had 15 months sobriety coming out of rehab, working 12-step.
All right. So that's a good start. We're going to come back and hear the rest of this.
Yeah, we can't wait. Ben is our guest. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. Welcome to Real Recovery. If you just tuned in, our guest is Ben, and we are hearing quite a story. George, I know you got a question for Ben. I'm going to let you take the next question.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, George.
Very nice of you. So things are going well this time, and you're working a 12-step program, going to church, in the Word. And how long did you get?
So I the longest that I'd ever gotten, which was about 15 months.
That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And usually we look at, if a guy can get 3 years, he's got a good shot. But getting that first year, you put out the old, you put on the new, things are working, it's your new normal, you're pretty happy.
Yep.
What happened?
Well, it's a good story.
It's a great story.
I was working, like you said, I was working the program. I was doing what I was told. I was seeing success. We had a family reunion. And all the siblings, remember, I come from a big family, a lot of brothers, right? I'm the oldest. I don't know if I said that, but oldest brother. We go to the family reunion. This is last August. And my youngest brother challenges me to an arm wrestling match. And of course, I'm the oldest brother. I gotta assert my dominance, and I can't refuse. So we're in the garage. We had rented an Airbnb. We're in the garage. This is the first night of the reunion. Everybody's, in the kitchen off the garage. Go to this arm wrestling match, and we're locked in. And I was surprised. My younger brother is a big kid, right? He's 12 years younger than me, 13 years younger than me. He's a big kid, though. I thought I was going to beat him because, I work out. I'm sure it's obvious. It's not obvious to people on Radio Land, but,
It would be if they were here.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Thank you. Anyway, I thought I was going to put him down right away. When I didn't, I remember there was a moment I said, okay, this is going to stop. I threw everything I had into it, and it wasn't a snap. It was like an explosion when my humerus spiral fractured and my arm flew backwards. I saw somebody's arm fly into my rear view vision.
It was yours.
It was mine.
Oh, boy.
Yep. And it flopped back in front of me, and I kind of caught it. And my brother and I were staring at each other. By the way, it's a no contest. He didn't win.
True.
Right. So just want to make
So
sure.
you got that.
Got that. I walk into the kitchen and say, hey, I broke my arm. And nobody believed me. Remember the consequences for lying? That might have been something to do with it.
Sure.
Nobody believed me until my wife saw that I was probably about to pass out. I got rushed to the hospital and had to have surgery. And that's the story about how I broke my arm. And it led to a relapse because I didn't have, short story is I didn't listen to my sponsor, and I didn't have a plan prepared for what to do in that kind of situation. And for anybody out there, who's in recovery, you got to have a plan and some answers if you're ever in a situation like that where pain medication is in question and needs to be used or doesn't need to be used. So just, you need to know what you're going to do. And you need to understand that, and I didn't, is that the moment I took that medication, it reawakened that monster inside of me, that feeling, that craving, the desire to take more was reawakened. And I remember my sponsor telling me to take what they gave you at the ER, but don't get a prescription and take it home. And I didn't do what I was told. I said, screw you, screw everybody else. I hurt, and I'm going to fill this prescription, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it either.
So in your defense, partially, when I take a mood-altering chemical, I am not technically sober, even if I go by the prescription and don't abuse it. It still gets you high.
Yeah.
So you're making decisions like you are using, and that's why he told you to take what they gave you and don't fill the prescription.
Right.
But we know better.
Right.
So we're going to fill it.
Yep. Everybody else just didn't understand how bad it hurt. And I had the perfect excuse.
Were you thinking like an addict again?
Yep. 100%. And it takes time, man. I'm still in this journey. I've been practicing at 12 steps for over 2 years now. Since that relapse, I've got another year's sobriety under my belt.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But that process of growth is it's a process, and it takes a lot of time. And those thoughts are still there. And I got to remember, to some extent, they might always be there. But what I am learning now is working has a high of its own, and there's a delight in
working with others.
There's a delight in doing the right thing just for the right reason, not because I'm going to get something out of it. But it's subtle. It's not something that's an immediate hit. But I think for me, one of the beautiful things about a 12-step program is it's this structure in place where if I follow it, the simple directions, I start to see that reward, and I start to experience the promises that come with doing the right thing. And they're in the Bible. I love Proverbs. I try and read a proverb a day because it's just full of glorious wisdom. And it tells me things like, God will reward me for hard work. And I think when I was younger, I always took the cheap, quick reward, and I geared my life around that. And I never learned that there's a bigger, deeper, more full reward that comes God's way than any way that I could come up with on my own or through any drug can offer. There's a dopamine chemical hit for sure, right? But God made that. And he structured it in a way that if I do it that way, I get that in the way that is fitting according to him. And it's not always easy, right? but it's better. And when you're in the middle of addiction, you can't see that. You think that way is the best. And even if you hear somebody say it, you don't really believe them.
Yeah, you lose the power of choice. So when you get some recovery, it talks about in the Blue Book, the obsession to use is gone. But the idea comes back, but you can subordinate that desire to use with all the other things you have in your life that you don't want to lose. You know, I don't want to lose coming in here and meeting with guys and going to church by a 10-second window of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell people? And I've seen this a lot. I was a Christian like you before I got sober, and I never could. And for me, the 12 steps is how I walk out my faith. I'd hear a great sermon, but I don't know how to do it. And as Bill always says when he speaks, he wants to give you something to take away in a brown paper bag that you can use, and he'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm listening tonight. I'm a Christian. I'm saved. I'm going to church. I'm doing all this stuff. But I can't seem to get over the hump on my sobriety. I make about 3 months and I go back. What can you do to help me?
You know, the 12 steps, every one of them, the truth in each one resonates and is cohesive with the truth in Scripture. And that realization for me was a game changer, because what I need is structure in my life. What I need is a plan when I wake up. And if I don't have that, I'm going off the rails. And so you can get that in a Bible study. You can get that in the Bible alone. You can get that through good teaching, right? That's what a 12-step is it funnels this wisdom down into a very simple program that you can follow and use. It's tools. It's tools in the toolbox, and it's true. And anybody who's successful, I don't care, addict or not, I think if you peel back the layers of the onion, you're going to find that they're practicing the truth that's embedded in those 12 steps.
And as you know, Acts 4:12, salvation comes from no other. I have a tendency to not speak in Christianese in a recovery meeting. I don't unpack it. And,
but you can hide behind that, though. And that's the thing.
I do.
Careful.
I got to be able to be me.
Yeah.
And when I'm in church settings, I get on my best behavior. And that doesn't work for me. And if that's you, that, you want to unpack it and lean into it and do all that, get to a place where you can tell people your secrets. Mm-hmm. And they still like you, because we all have pretty much the same ones. Is that what you found?
I found that. And I found it when I'm living that lying, cheating lifestyle. I can't look at myself in the mirror in the morning, because I know that I'm a fraud and I'm a fake. But when I'm combining these steps with the truth of the gospel and who I am in Christ, I can look at myself in the mirror.
That's outstanding.
That's
Ben,
what it's all about, boy.
Yeah. What a great story. And Ben, it's so interesting. From a very young age, you had a born again experience, and parents that loved you and prayed for you. And
yeah.
No question, there was a tremendous amount of protection as a result of that prayer, those prayers, and the deep, deep love that not only your parents had, but probably your relatives and your church community had for you.
Oh, I was covered in prayer, for sure. My mom prayed for me every single day.
She did.
She did.
Yeah.
I wish she could see me now, as she can, in a way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm inspired by your story. I think not only did you tell it well, but you're very honest and raw and transparent, and I think that is helping so many people who have tuned in to listen today.
I hope so.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Great job.
Yeah. That is our show. Thank you for listening to Real Recovery. Say, if you just discovered us, that's awesome. You can go and learn more about us at myfaithradio.com. We have our own page called Real Recovery. Lots of other episodes there. If you need to hear another episode like right now, you can go do it. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
On the latest episode of the Wow God Stories podcast, we go to Africa.
I was raised in Sierra Leone in a community that truly lived the phrase, "It takes a village."
Until one day, the world outside Anita's village broke in.
I didn't grow up in a war zone, but I watched one unfold in the country I love.
God brought hope to her story and many others through radical provision.
God began to direct us towards Uganda, Africa.
I was born and grew up in the countryside of Ethiopia.
Nanjan I met in Kigali, Rwanda.
Discover how God showed up in the middle of war, loss, and impossible odds in Africa. Stories that'll make you say,
"Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God."
Wow, God Stories. Wherever you get your podcasts.